Interesting, right? They play more. That's because we have these things called weekends, and the job stops, and we go and we play, and then we go back to work on Monday. Whereas students probably drop out for 2-3 hours, then move back in, or maybe it's the number of games. I don't know the exact reason for that, but older players play more. Age influences a lot of the selection of class and vehicles. Older players are more likely to choose support role classes, and older players choose tanks over helicopters and jets. Again, they're focusing on objective play and risk factors. So, interesting, out of 10,000 people this came up, and they were controlling for personality factors. So, the only thing that they're trying to look at in the study is age. So player modeling can be more accurate a lot if age is corrected in the study. So if you're looking at how do older players act, what do they do, you can start to look at that in terms of player modeling. And they found that 40 to 50% of the gameplay values of how many times you had a capture of the flag, of how many times did you get killed, of what class you selected, 40 to 50% of that could be explained by the gameplay value of age. Playability increases in the early 20s, then begins to decline swiftly, but the decline slows over time. So your ability will drop off, but the experience kind of comes in to fill with that time. Okay. So player modeling, why do they play our game? So up to now I've kind of talked about who's playing, what the demographics look like, how that kind of affects it, but why are they playing this? So one of the things that we want to look at when we're kind of doing games design is, can we come up with our typical video game player, of our target audience, our target player. And one of the ways that has been brought forward to think about this is play personas. So personas is a method utilized within software engineering where what I do is I say, okay, let's take a car. If I'm designing a car, who's a potential driver of that? There's, maybe a pregnant woman could be an example of this. Okay, so we have a pregnant woman. Her name is Susie. Susie goes to this place every day, and they come up with basically a false human. And they create the whole story driven around it, and then they say, how will Susie like this vehicle? And the idea is, if my thinking as a designer differs from what Susie would think, then I should design for Susie, not for myself. And part of it, they say, personas avoid self-referential designs where designers may unconsciously project their own mental models, working as reality checks, helping designers keep the focus on a limited subset of users that have been deemed to be primary. The biggest issue with this is there's a lot of studies that actually say, no, that's not the case. When we actually did empirical studies with managers, and we said to them, hey, could you take a look at this business decision, think about Susie, they would try to then frame whatever their own decisions were in Susie's mind. So they had a confirmation bias based off of this. This is coming out of research from 2015 having to do with marketing for it. Personas, this is coming kind of very early after personas came out, that they rarely take into account real data available, do not necessarily have much relation to actual uses of the models, limited ability of them to have some sort of scientific model based on them and quantitative. And one thing that really bothers me myself is that after the development phase, a lot of persona models, they say throw away your persona models. And then when you go into maintenance or you go to design, the new car or the game 2.0, you don't look at your original personas. And you create your own new personas. But Susie is still pregnant and still driving cars. Maybe not, but Susie is a representative of class. Pregnant women still exist. So why did we throw away that model? And now we have to create new models. Maybe we forget about Susie in version 2.0 because of that. Okay, so a lot of this has to do with that there's no way to force a persona to, one, exist, and two, to punch people. I don't want that. I'm going to have it come back and yell at me. So how can we address them for games? So personas, generalized framework, archetypical user for design and marketing, they act as a framework for this. Personas, I'm not saying are a bad idea. They're a rather good idea. Here's the person I'm designing this thing for. Let's make a model of this person, let's utilize that. But a persona doesn't push on a developer as a real user would. If I had Susie in the room, she can say, no, I don't want that thing. So hence giving the persona an agency beyond just the developer's own mind would make this better. For example, with Susie and the pregnant woman, Ford engineers, what they did is they actually had a bodysuit that they would wear when they're designing cars that simulates the weight and pressures that a pregnant woman would have. And then they go and sit in the car. And it was amazing to hear what the engineers say when they come out of the car, because they say things like, okay, I need to, maneuver where I put all of these devices because Susie can't use it. So that's a physical way to force them to think like Susie. AIs, artificial intelligences within games, acting as the player in that place, could also do that. Could also be this physical thing. So personas is an archetype of a player, AIs can act as players. So the idea is for every persona, we implement an AI that is equivalent to the persona. So if my persona is Susie likes to go around dungeons and killing everything, then we create an AI that does just that aims for that as the goals of it. So Humgar et al. Kind of look at this, personas versus clones for player decision making. They created a procedural playtesting model. So playtesting is very, very expensive. I have to get a whole bunch of people into a room, I have to probably pay them or feed them or do something to get them to play my game, because, I don't know, people don't like playing games when you've got like cameras upon them and you're monitoring everything that they do and you've got a little checkboard and you're going, how are you feeling right now? That's not a nice play situation. So, there we go. So, they created these kind of evolved agents to go after this. They use mini dungeons, which are just a 12 by 12 board. Tiles can either have walls or non-walls. There's monsters to kill, there are treasures for taking, there's healing, and there's an exit. And what they wanted to do was create a bunch of different ways to play through this. So first they looked at play traces from actual humans. They went out, they found 38 humans that were willing to take the pizza and do this trial. They had 10 different levels, and so that gave them 380 individual player traces. And so here, this is one guy going through and kind of killing everything. This guy kind of dodges this area that gets to the exit. So then they defined 5 different persona AIs. Exit. Its goal is, I just try to leave the level. Runner attempts to leave the level in the fastest method possible. So exit is just, I'm going to leave. Runner is, here's the shortest path to the exit, run for it. Survivalist is risk averse, so if it doesn't have to deal with the monster to get to the exit, it won't, but it can take treasures when it sees them. So it aims to grab as many treasures as it can that are easy. Monster killer attempts to kill all the monsters, even if it dies. Treasure collector attempts to collect all the treasures, even if it dies. So could we see this inside of our own players, that this could happen? We all know people who are the sniper inside of something, right? They want, the camper, the reckless guy that goes up and does this. So you can kind of define this for quite a few different games. Clones, what they did is they evolved a player controller to go over those 380 traces and then create something that was close to how humans play. And these acted as the baseline agents. So they found that both persona-based and clones were close in terms of the actions that they made. So humans could be modeled by a persona set. So some issues, there's no discussion really as to which personas were in the class of humans, and clones were more likely to produce a generalized play method. If I say to you, let's take the average person in this room, then they're going to be, half woman, half man, some with half glasses. It doesn't really fit, right? Average is usually not a good metric on actions like how do you play a game. Personas, they had to kind of match the best fit. So personas were also much worse than clones on metric for which they were not created, not evolved. Clones generalized better. So looking at a whole bunch of different human play traces was a better way to make a generalized agent than a persona-based agent. And they did this also as part of critics for dungeon generation. So now they said, okay, we have these clones, we have these personas, let's make some dungeons and see what they say of them. Does the killer say, I don't like this level because I can't kill enough? Or does the runner say, this level is impossible? So again, they had this same sort of representation. They did some evolutionary methods for this that kind of mixed and combined levels together in different ways and came up with a set that met with what the population was asking for. So here's our monster killer, and you can see that in the monster killer levels, here's my entrance and my exit, here's my monsters. All of my monsters are relatively easily accessible. This is a level that a monster killer would like. And there's enough potions and health potions that you can probably kill all the monsters. Our treasure collector moves all of the monsters out of the way, so he doesn't have to face any of the monsters, and he can basically come down and grab all of the treasures relatively easily. I think there's only one that's guarded by a monster right here. So that would be a good level for someone who loves to collect treasures. This is our risk-adverse one that only kills when he can, and you can see he comes down and he can kill a few, but then he's got an easy pathway to the exit, or he can come up here and grab some things. Our treasure collector with a risk fitness. So the risk fitness was adding in an element of I die sometimes. Okay. So depending on what your personas are, you can then design levels that either they like, dislike, and put a fitness against them. Okay. Any questions at this point?
Well, actually, yes.
Yeah.
I have a question about the persona of Suzy.
Yeah.
Maybe because some authors and some game designers say that you should aim at the would-be person. But you should not aim at Suzy as she is, but you should aim that Suzy dreams to be Aragorn, I don't know, or...
Okay. So kind of aiming at where their want is.
Yes, they some ideal person they want to be, would be Suzy, and that game designers say that Suzy will pay for her dream.
Okay.
That she will see the ideal Suzy, she can be there in the game.
So are we looking at that in terms, so you're talking about kind of the narrative as you get through the game, that it will upgrade you as you go?
Yeah.
So in board games that's a little bit harder. In playing games I'm probably going to get into that as we talk about it. But it also has to do with kind of what is their pathway to make that ideal. So if you're looking at something like Fallout, there's many different ways to move through that space. Or ideal at the end is